Welcome everybody, and I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the different lands we're meeting on this evening and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and always with a heart full of gratitude for their amazing stewardship of these lands for millennia. So tonight online again, but fantastic to have as many people here as possible because we've got a great guest speaker lined up tonight, the wonderful Pat Collins, who's online with us, worrying about her yellow light, but she looks amazing. So Pat's right there, centre of the screen, and Pat's going to be chatting about wonderful weeds and useful weeds at our doorstep. And for those of you who might not know Pat yet, many of us I know do, she is actually a herbalist and also an iridologist, a reflexologist and a clinical hypnotherapist. She's also a board member of Estuary Learning and a vice president and treasurer for Indigenous Plants for Health Association. She lives with her husband on a bush block surrounded by the Wollemi National Park at Martindale near Denman, and I've been very happily there to visit, doing a bush camp with Pat over a weekend a little while ago, a couple of years ago, which was really awesome, and I would highly recommend if she starts doing them again soon. And Pat also runs the Total Health and Education Centre in Muswellbrook, which is obviously a centre for health. So she's going to be talking about a few of her favourite weeds tonight. She's just going low tech and in her best fashion, holding up some weeds and talking about the awesomeness of those weeds. You might also know that she's an author of the amazing book, The Wondrous World of Weeds, which if you've been a student of mine particularly, I really highly recommend. Such an awesome reference book. So without further ado, I'll introduce Pat, and I would say maybe that we can spotlight Pat, Sandy, once we hand over, because she'll be just in talking mode. So as Sandy said, if you wouldn't mind just popping your questions into the chat pod, and we'll just regularly batch those questions so Pat can get a bit of a rhythm up to her speech. So over to you, Pat. Thank you so much for coming along tonight. We're really appreciative of your time and your wonderful knowledge.
Thank you very much. Okay, now look, I have actually been teaching for about 30 years. I learned to be a herbalist, for people that don't know, back in the 80s. And I've actually been practicing as a herbalist for about 27 years. I love teaching about plants and particularly about weeds, because these are plants that are all around us and that we can use all the time. So, you know, straight away you can get into it, growing these weeds. Oh, you right? Right.
For 4 weeks you didn't call. And then when you give.
Sorry, Pat, can you unmute? I accidentally muted you when I was trying to mute someone else.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sorry about that.
I don't
Apologies.
know what I got cut off with, but so basically I'm a herbalist, and I've been it for so I've been actually practicing at the centre and elsewhere for about 27 years, and I've been teaching for about 30. So I teach courses and workshops all over the place, and if you ever want to check them out, just go to my website, which is just www.patcollins.com.au, and you can find out. And when in my very early pieces, this is the first book I wrote. Can you see that okay? It's called Useful Weeds at Our Doorstep, and that's where I started from way back. I think it was the 90s or something. I wrote this book for my students, and it was 40 useful weeds around the area. This is what I call my talk as well. And it was a book more on information rather than just pictures. There's some pictures at the front. But this was to teach people how to use plants around the area. And then later on, I did do that book that you just spoke about, Kerry. So because particularly it's all about recognition, and that's why I want to show you. Yes, I could have shown you pictures, but I just think it's so good to be able to see these things as closely as possible. Now, can you see that okay? Is that easy for you to see?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is plantain. Okay, so that is the top of plantain. That is the seed part of the plantain. And this is the leaf of the plantain. And for the ones that don't know it, there is a greater plantain, and then there's this fellow here, which is lanceolata. So plantain, I just want to go through some uses of some plants that grow around you, because I know you're a permaculture group, and I've been having a lot to do with permaculture groups over the years. And it's just great because you would understand that the plants that grow around you grow there because they are meant to be there. They're trying to put the minerals back into the soil. They're trying to find balance with nature. I've seen a whole area devastated by cattle, you know, like yards and things. And then up comes the mallow to try and fix the land, trying to open up the soil and put it all back. Of course, farmer comes along and poisons it all. But anyway, but basically, nature is always trying to fix our mistakes. And this little plant here grows wherever we go. We often call it white man's foot, because wherever white man goes, along comes this behind him. So the American Indians called it white man's foot because they just watched this plant and they saw it following white man. Now, this is all over the world. I've been over to Russia, I've been over to Asia, I've been all sorts of places, and I can always find my plantain. There's different types, but basically this one is the most common one. And you'll always recognise it by its little seed head as well, that you can turn around and flick at each other, you know. That's why some people remember this plant. But basically, plantain is a very, very useful plant. And so if you just learn and remember about plantain alone, you'll remember a lot of things. So it often grows in places that have been hard packed. So people have been walking on this area a long time or whatever, and it just opens up the ground and grows in that area. We never had any plantain here. I actually had to plant it. I did have I have got some native plantain, grows all up my bush because I'm surrounded by Wollemi National Park, which is a smaller plant that we call sago plant, but it hasn't got the medicinal uses that we know this plant has. Now, what is the medicinal uses of this plant? Now, first of all, it's often called ointment weed. So if you have got a cut or something like that, you can actually wrap it around your finger, you know, chomp it up a bit, and then wrap it around the finger. And it is amazing for healing. I cut myself quite badly the other day with a knife when I was out there in John's Walk picking, and all I could find was this, and I just wrapped it around like that and found a bit of tape and stuck it around it, and it's just so good. It just feels so beautifully. I even had a fellow put a big nail right through his finger, and one of my students said, I know, I've got the perfect plant. And they raced out and got the plantain to put around it. And that fellow came to my courses after that. So it's a brilliant plant. It's a really beautiful healer. It's also extremely good lung herb. Very, very good if you're asthma. I put in my Breathe Easy tea. It can be used for all sorts of things. Put into green drinks. It's a beautiful lymphatic herb. It's good for the eyes. It's good for the whole body. We shouldn't be just buying pills and antioxidants and all those other things that we do all the time. We should be using the plants that grow around us. Always remember, what grows around you can often be what you need the most. And this is a simple little plant to use. And make a tea by all means. Dry it, grind it up, make it capsules, make it a powder, put it on your food, whatever you like. But try and remember to use your plantain because it is a very, very valuable plant. Now, another very valuable plant is this one. Oops. I've got myself stung by this several times now. So it's a bit nasty, this one. This is, there's different types of stinging nettles. As long as it stings you, you're pretty right. You've got a stinging nettle. So this is a native nettle, and it's just going to seed now. Always packs a sting. So you try and grab it and always go this direction, and it tends to not sting you so much. But nettles is a marvelous plant because it's got so many minerals. It's loaded with minerals. It's got the things that we're often missing, like zinc and magnesium, and it's got lots of things like selenium, and it's loaded with silicon. And in fact, it's so high in silica, I put it in my my nettle hair conditioner that we use to rub on the hair and leave on as long as possible. Or we chop it up, cover it in apple cider vinegar, leave it to sit in a nice warm spot, and then put it on 10% on the hair at the end. It makes your hair very thick. I've even got hairdressers that have said that to me. That's what they really noticed about it. But it's far beyond that. You can make gorgeous, you can make very nice tea with this. You can put it in your food. You can be as like dry it so nobody recognises it. And then you can put it into quiches and all sorts of things like that. You can make stinging nettle soups. just don't put it into the food because it comes out exactly looking like that, and that's not very yummy looking. So, but it is very, very dark green. Anything that's very dark green, you know, is very high in chlorophyll. So it's absolutely loaded with minerals. It's a beautiful plant to, and look, it would be eaten to death if it wasn't for the stings on it. The oils in there, there's a tremendous lot of oils in the little seeds. Overseas, especially the bigger nettles, they actually run lamps with them. So this is actually Australian nettle, and there's often what they call an English nettle, which is a smaller nettle that grows very commonly around the place, and that is also can be used all the time. So I want to see you put more nettles into your food. Don't of course eat them raw. That would not be pleasant. Just put them into boiling water, pull them out, and straight away the sting's gone. Or dry them, grind them up, and use them that way. So nettles will actually fertilise your ground. It puts a lot of nitrogen into your ground. And if you grow it around your peppermint and things like that, it will actually accentuate the essential oils in them. And if you grow it around things like tomatoes and that, it actually makes longer yields. They actually keep for longer. I know it's a pain in the ass to have nettles growing next to your tomatoes and get hit by them. So just be careful where you grow it, but always be aware of it. And you know, you only got to get stung once and you know it. Now, the main thing is with stinging nettles, if you do get stung with it, whatever you do, don't touch it. Because if you don't touch it, you won't cause that histamine reaction, and then you won't have all the trouble with recurring stinging and that, so forth. But you can rub it with plantain. You can get the juice from the nettle and put it on there, and it will stop all that recurrence of stinging. I used to have a lady that was very, very fond of being, I don't know, I suppose she likes these sort of things, but she used to hit herself with it and get a real hit with it. So everyone's different. But they used to use it for arthritis. You hit yourself with it and you can't feel your arthritis anymore. So a good anti-inflammatory. So lots and lots of wonderful uses for this plant. Now, I've got lots of little plants here. There's another one I picked up here for you. Is this one. It's very easy to recognise this one because it sticks on you. So this is called clivers. Clivers or cleavers. It's just going to seed now. And the little seeds, if you collect them, my goodness, you'd have to be clean. They're very, very small. This is a little tiny seed, a little thing here. And you can actually roast them, and then you can make an alternative to coffee. But basically, I use clivers I use it very, very good lymphatic herb. It's also a very good kidney herb. So you can again make tea. I make a tonic tea out of nettles and clivers and peppermint and dandelion. Beautiful teas you can make for these sort of things. Gives you a really good pick-me-up. Always put it something nice and a bit tasty like peppermint and things. But this plant is very, very good. It's very sticky. I think they say it's where they got the idea of Velcro from, because it just sticks to you all the time. It sticks to everything, climbs up everything. It only grows in certain areas, but if you do see it around, I mean, I travel a long way to find my herbs sometimes because some of them don't grow around where I am, like hawthorn berries and things. So if you haven't got this growing around your area, you need help with your lymphatic system and your kidneys, because it's very good for kidney stones and things. This is a very good plant for you. Okay, so that's little clivers or Dandelion. Now, I'll just show you this plant because I've just been busy picking it. This is St. John's wort. I tried to keep it alive for you, but it's dying by the second. Because I go out there and I pick, this is the time of year you get St. John's wort. And this is the flowers. I don't know, it might be hard to see. And this is the fresh plant. I've got a little bit of fresh plant there, you can see. Now, the only way to recognise St. John's wort and to really know that you've got St. John's wort is you actually need to see it's got little tiny oil glands in the flowers. So when you press the flowers and you crush it in your fingers, if you've got good oil, you get nice nice purple on your fingers. I think it might be a bit hard to see. Yeah, it's a bit hard to come. It's not coming up very strong to see. But basically, you'll get an oil out of it, and the little oil glands are also little tiny things under the leaves. A lot of people get the wrong plants and try and make St. John's wort out of it, and that's just not going to work. So if you're going to make St. John's wort oil or hypericum oil, which is a brilliant oil, you get the flowers when they're nice and fresh, and you pick them and you put them into oil, and you make it as many flowers as you can in that oil. Just cover it with enough olive oil just to cover it, just a little bit above the plants. Put it in a warm spot. I leave it there for months, so make sure it's nice and red and strong. But it is a very, very useful plant. That the oil is very good for pain. You can put essential oil and things like that into it and make it for a pain reliever, for a headache, for a sore neck. Very, very good against green ants. Brilliant for whitetail spider bites, because whitetail spider bites affect the nervous system, and this plant quietens down the nervous system. So extremely good for shingles and anything to do with the nerves. It's a beautiful plant and yet a noxious plant, and we're not supposed to grow it. So I actually go out and collect it off people's farms that are way out, so that they haven't got the strong, in Muswellbrook Shire we've got rather strong restrictions, but out further you're supposed to poison it if you see it. But out further, they pretty well get away with it. So there's so much of it out there at the moment. So just go out west, out Mudgee Way, or out Ralston Way, or and there might be other areas. I know Central Coast. I have come across some places. Remember Little Jillaby? I used to go to Little Jillaby Hall. There used to be a little area there that someone on his farm had some growing. So look around for it. It's a very valuable plant. You're not supposed to grow it, so because it can cover a whole countryside, so it's not a good idea to encourage these things. But this is a very good plant. Most of you might know it for depression. You drink it and it calms and relaxes, but it's brilliant for the nerves. And if you've been pushing and pushing your nerves and all these years and you just need something to calm those nerves and relax the body, then this is what you need to do. This is a very, very valuable plant for that purpose. I dry it, I grind it up, I make it into tincture, we make ointments, we make creams, make oils. There's all sorts of things that you can do with some Jones wort, but it is a valuable plant. Think of it for the nervous system, and it's an easy way to remember. It's also a very good antiviral herb, which means it's very good for things like cold sores and things like that, because it's good for those sort of enclosed viruses. And interesting enough, the flu and the coronavirus enclosed viruses as well. So a beautiful herb for all those sort of things as well. It's not going to cure it, but I mean, it's just to help you and keep you well. Okay, another good little plant that you probably know around the place would be this little monster I've got here. Oops. So this is a smaller piece, and this is Paddy's Lucerne. And Paddy's Lucerne, and this is an enormous long one. So we dug this up so that you could see the root, because it's the root I mainly use. Now the root is extremely good for cough medicine. In the root, the outside of the root itself, not the inside so much, but the wooden pit is. That's why you get sort of sizes like this, not great big Paddy's Lucerne. You chop it all up, and it's the root bark that actually is very good for calming and relaxing the lungs, but at the same time it's a very good expectorant. So it still will bring out the rubbish. We cook it up in a syrup, so it tastes yummy, because everyone loves a syrup. A bit of peppermint oil. If you don't want to make it into a syrup, of course, you can just make it into a tea, just boil it up and make a decoction and then drink it that way, or you can even preserve it with some glycerine. A little bit of peppermint oil, always nice. I cut up the roots. The recipe that I make the Paddy's Lucerne cough syrup for is in my books, and basically it's 80 grams of the root chopped up, 80 grams of the leaf or the little stems, they're full of mucilage, chopped up, and you boil it up in 750 mils of water, and then you got to boil it down to, by memory here, 650 or something like that, and then you've got to add a pile of sugar. Everyone goes, oh my god, look at that sugar. So but that's what keeps it. So if you are going to make a syrup, that's how you make a syrup. It's got a very indistinct little flower on it, little tiny yellowy flower. It's very small, and the seeds can be very irritating actually. So that's beautiful Paddy's Lucerne, but not only good for coughs, it's also good, it protects the gut, and it's really good for reflux, and works really, really well for reflux as well. And I would love to see all those little refluxy babies be on Paddy's Lucerne syrup instead of taking, putting on Nexium and all these sort of things that we use for adults when they're very, very young. Now, another good herb is this one. It's only just young at the moment, and you may not recognise it. It's got a red stem as it gets older, and the seeds, you might be able to see the little flower here. When they get old, they get black berries on them. We call them inkweed. And it's quite a large plant. It's 5 acre octandra. It grows into a monster of a plant way up the ceiling. Some of mine are enormous. This lovely season we're having, and it's the roots that we normally use. Now, the Aboriginal people, or First Nation people, have used this plant for a long, long time, and they used to use it externally for all sorts of ulcers and all sorts of things like that. But we do say people not to eat the outside plant and to be careful because it has got poisonous qualities. So when it's young, you can eat it, but when do you know it's young? When do we know it's all old? You're best off not to eat it at all. And but it is very closely related to pokeroot, and they have a season over in America called poke salé, and where they all make a big fuss about this plant. It's very, very similar to this. This one grows in South America, where the other one, October Americana, grows in the North America. They work very similarly. They are lymphatic drainers. And what I do is I use the root of it, which I use when the plant dies down. I chop up the root and I dry the root and I make it into ointments, and it's particularly good for sinuses. So it drains the lymph system. Put peppermint with it, we rub it on here, across here, behind the ears, and it drains the lymphatic system. It's a really, really good herb for that sort of problem. You can also use it for any trouble around the breast because it's a lymphatic herb. And you can use it for any swellings and good for mastitis and all sorts of things like that. Think about lymphatics, you think about this herb. Now,
Pat,
what else? Yep.
Pat, sorry to interrupt. We've been inundated with questions, and I was wondering if I could ask a couple of them.
No problem.
Thanks. Regarding the plantain, Kerry wants to know if you use the seed head of the plantain.
You can use all the parts of always when you think of a plant, the best part of the plant is when it's going to seed or going to flower. That's its culmination. So using just the top of the seed head, the stalk, not so much. So the leaves and the tops of them, I do use of plantain. Yes, you can use all of that.
Cool. And when you're making tea using plantain, is there any such thing as too much? I mean, how much can you?
No, it's a bit like eating grass. You can eat a heck of a lot of plantain. And it's a bit like thinking about, eating cabbage or something like that, or lettuce. You can eat a lot of it. It's loaded with goodness.
Keely's made a comment that plantain seed heads are native psyllium that can be used the same way as the shop bought psyllium is used, psyllium husk.
Yes, that's a good point. Yes. And so basically that's that little, when I showed you the seed head, which I can't put now. Oh, here it is. This is the bit she's talking about, this bit in here.
Right. And
you can use that. So it's a large, the psyllium plants are a larger variety of this plant, and they grow bigger heads.
Right. Lorraine would like to know, do you get more constituents out of the St. John's wort if you infuse it in alcohol?
Oh yes, that's how you make what they call a tincture. And so if you chop that up and you cover it with brandy or whatever, or vodka, you need something at least 30% alcohol. Then that will get all the constituents out of it. She's right, because if you just make a tea, you're only going to get what's water soluble. But of course, if you dry it up and grind it up and just eat it or make it into capsules or something, you'll get in the whole plant too. So there's different ways you can do it.
Cool. Meg has made the comment that in trials, St. John's wort is performed as well as prescribed antidepressants, but always talk with your doctor before coming off antidepressants.
She's dead right about that, and it's actually came up much better than Prozac. There's been lots of work done on that, and it's very, very popular over in Europe, particularly in Germany. But there is a thing, if you're on antidepressants, you're not supposed to touch St. John's wort. Now, the reason for that, it actually just can interfere in the uptake of it. But basically, what I would say to people, if you want to come off your antidepressant, this is a herb you can come onto, and that is no problems if you want to do it that way. Also, if you're having just a little bit of St. John's wort in a tea, that is not going to matter. It's not strong enough to worry something like an antidepressant. But yes, it is a brilliant herb. But once you're on an antidepressant, remember there's actually done things in your brain, not just dopamine and serotonin. There's a lot more than that. And when you come off it, there can be side effects and things. So you need to get that balance. It's good to go to someone and get help with that sort of thing.
our Dr. Clara has added that your doctor will probably tell you that having a clear idea of dosage, interactions, and strength is very important when treating a serious medical condition, probably.
Yes, definitely.
And Bridget has asked, and Bridget, please speak up if I get this wrong. What was the name of the last plant that you showed us? The one that was a great lymphatic drainer?
Yeah.
That one. Is that the one?
That was inkweed.
Inkweed.
Inkweed or Phytolacca octandra.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you very much. Now we're caught up with all the questions. Thank you for that.
Beautiful, no problems. It's a good idea because otherwise we get too far forward and you think, well, what was that herb she was talking about? I can't remember what that one was about. So now another beautiful herb that you must all know in your permaculture gardens is chickweed. Beautiful little chickweed. Now chickweed, of course, a very hard one to show you on a picture like this, but basically it's just a little wanderer. It grows around your garden. Very nice little plant to be able to use. And when you look at chickweed, you get a piece of chickweed like this, you look at the stem and it has tiny little hairs going up one side, then it stops and the hairs come up the other side. And then it has a little tiny star-like little flower. And when you pull it open, it has got a little membrane in the middle, not white sap. If it's white sap, it could be petty spurs, which you put on suspect sunspots. But you don't use this, and you don't eat anything that's got white sap unless you know it's edible. But chickweed is extremely edible. You can make lovely salads with it, and it's full of goodness. I know one company makes an iron tonic and has chickweed in it, and chickweed is actually very known for losing weight, and it has actually been proven to do that. I don't know how much chickweed you have to eat. Perhaps you have to live on chickweed soup or something. But basically, it is loaded with goodness. It is a nice little chlorophyll plant. It's a great alternative to lettuces and things like that. That you can chop up and put with other bits and pieces, and I've often make it. Now, when you nicest time to do it is just you eat the tops. You don't eat when it gets long and strangly like that. It's going to be a bit chewy, and you can put in your soups and things like that. But you've got little amino acids and all the bits and pieces. But the biggest thing I do with chickweed is I chop it up, and I would use 200 grams of chickweed, and I do tend to nearly always put it with plantain. So I use 200 grams of chickweed and 100 grams of plantain. I chop them up very finely and I cover them with 800 mils of olive oil. I will heat that up until nearly all the bubbles have gone, not quite, because I want to burn the oil, and just do it nice and gently. It will take a little while, and then get the bubbles off. Soon the bubbles off, that means all the water's left it and all the goodness has gone into the oil. Then you filter it. You put 100 grams of beeswax with it. You stir it until it's cold, and then you pour it into jars, and you have beautiful chickweed ointment, which is so good for itches and scratches and very good. I remember one little fella, he was going to the coast and he was very allergic to mosquito bites. And the mum said that that was their saviour, because as soon as he got hit by a mosquito, he just put on his chickweed, stop the itching, so that he didn't scratch himself. So that's what was causing infection, you see. So it works very, very well like that. So lovely little chickweed, very good for any sort of eczemas, some sort of dermatitis as well. I often put hemp oil and calendula with it as well to make a lovely hemp ointment. Very, very good success with people with eczemas and things like that. So that's a lovely thing that you can do for yourself. Now, this is another little herb here. I don't know how well you can see this one. It's might be a bit hard to see. It's got a little tiny pink flower. It's called fumitory. And fumitory is a little strangler, and it's a little, like not a strangler, it's a little climber, and it's only very, very delicate, often called smokeweed. But it's got a thing in it called fumarian, and often you can put it with chickweed, you can put it with plantain. You've got to find out what's in your area and make ointments out of that, because again, it's very good for dermatitis and problems like that. Not so nice to eat really, but you can make it, you can put it into teas. I think Hilda Hems has a tea, and she always puts her fumitory into her teas. So you know, that's a European plant. Now, most of these plants I've shown you come from Europe. Have come and come with us over to Australia, and just like us, they've got and they've settled down into Australia and they're here and they're not going to leave us. This plant would have been one of the other ones that hasn't, because this would come from South America. And this, by the way, the inkweed was used by the Australian Aborigines a long, long time, because I remember first one of these elders came up to me and she said to me, that's women's business. We use that for women's business, which is interesting because it always was used for like, you know, trouble with the breasts and things like that. Okay, so that's that beautiful herb. Now, another interesting herb for you to have look at, and this is blackberry nightshade. Now, a lot of people think blackberry nightshade is belladonna, which is poisonous, you know, deadly nightshade. But we grow blackberry nightshade in this area, and we don't. I think you'll have trouble finding belladonna. It's got quite a different flower. I don't know if the flower is. Oh, might be hard for you to see the flower. It's a little tiny white flower with a little tiny yellow center in it, but it might be a bit hard for you to see that on there. You might have to go elsewhere. But once you've got the name of the plant, you can always look it up. The blackberry nightshade, or Solonium nigrum. So it's one of the soloniums, and the soloniums have actually given us a lot of beautiful plants. Some of them are poisonous, so you've got to know your plants, but some are very, very useful, such as a tomato and a potato. Now, we don't worry about the fruits that come on potatoes. You know, they're actually quite poisonous, those green little fruits on potatoes, but we don't worry about those. And we shouldn't worry about these little green berries here are also quite poisonous. So you just got to know and understand that. But once they're black, they're very edible. So a little black, they're too high in selenium when they're green. So always teach people, don't touch the green berries, only eat the blackberries, and even the birds and things know that. The blackberries are gorgeous, and they're just like little tiny licorice tomato, and I got so much of it grown this year. It's just incredible. A lot of people don't like it because it has the bug on it that goes onto our potatoes and things. I think I've got enough of it to feed every bug at the moment. But the bug, since the droughts have been a lot less, which is something. But basically this plant, besides the berries, which are very high in vitamin C, and you can make beautiful jam out of them. I make gorgeous jam out of them, but it's a lot of hard work. The berries are very small. And it's one of those things, you know, put nice music on, watch the TV, whatever, and pick away. And you'll get a nice lot, and you boil it up, and you can, you know, preserve it and so forth. But it makes like a little blackcurrant jam almost, you know, it's very like that. Over in the Orange Free State in South Africa, and where they love this plant, they adore it and they use it or know it. They really look up to this plant, which is actually just a plant that's just become naturalised over there. And they win all the Orange Free State jam contests with the berries, with the jams that they make. But this main thing about this plant, though, now I think there's a lot of wonderful things we don't even know about this plant. But basically, I make this into an ointment, the same as I just told you with the chickweed one. 200. I use this plant, 250 grams of this plant, boiled up in 800 mils of olive oil with 100 grams of beeswax. And I would use all the smaller stems, the leaves, the flowers, the berries, little berries. Even the green berries are fine as long as they're boiled in oil, because oil will destroy the selenium. Not if you put in water or anything. So no making pots of tea. It's not a very pleasant tasting herb anyway. So chop it up all finely, put it into your oil, boil it up, and it's extremely good for cold sores. And it's good for any sort of herpes problems. So think about the herpes, think of shingles and all those sort of problems. There's quite a big area that you can look after with this plant. And with the ointment, you can rub it on your lips all the time if you suffer from them. I used to have a lady that had, she used to get them all up her back, all these cold sores, and she said these were as good as any ointment she got from a chemist. And some people even say it's better. And you can use it for wherever you get herpes problems. Very, very safe, and you know, if you use it on your lips, okay, that's fine. It's not an issue, but you can also use it for a lot of other things. It's used for impetigo. It can be used for acne. I just think it's got a massive amount of uses. I had a lady that had bad cancer, and she had this terrible all over breasts, and she was having chemo and all that sort of thing. And it was just that the sores were so painful, and she said this was the only ointment that gave her any relief. So interesting what you can do with your beautiful plants. So don't underestimate what nature has grown for us and what we can use around the place. Now I'm going to show you a plant that we probably all hate. And this is Wandering Dew. So this is actually Wandering Dew. It's not the native, it's the introduced species. So you can see it's the other one we call scurvyweed. So you can see that very distinct little white flower on it, with 3 petals, and it's white flowered, whereas the scurvyweed, which is a native to Australia, is a blue flowered plant. Now I'd encourage you to all grow the blue flowered plant, and I do grow some blue flowered plant, but this one seems to have got rather established, which is very naughty of me, but anyway, it has, and it's under my fruit trees. And what I love about it, and it's not worried now, but in a drought particularly, it keeps all the moisture under your trees. I don't know if any of you ever knew the fellow at Patterson that had an orange orchard, but he used to grow this all under his fruit trees, and it always kept all the moisture down, and moisture in there, and he said he could cut a third of his irrigation down from it. So it's an amazing plant like that, how it holds the moisture in. Some people don't like it because they say their dogs are allergic to it. More my dogs just lie in it. I'm not sure why dogs get allergic to it. It doesn't even have an essential oil. It doesn't have any hairs. I'm not sure what it is, but there must be something in it that irritates some animals. Anyway, you can also eat this plant, particularly the scurvyweed. I eat more than this one. It's nice and fleshy. It's quite edible, but and it can be used for washing your eyes and things. But again, I would tend to use more of the scurvyweed than this one. Okay, now another plant I wanted to show you. What's very important is plants look different. So when they're young, for instance, this is fleabane. It looks like this, and when it's older, it looks like this. And they look extremely different. So it's often very good for you to sit there and watch your little weeds and plants like that and just see how they develop, so before you can recognise them, and always wait for them to seed. Now, fleabane just covered the place property last year. It was incredible amount of growth. It was just such an ideal climate for it. And I presume after the droughts and after the fires, it was trying to put all the goodness back into the land. I'll tell you what, it put plenty of fleabane back into the land. So more fleabane growing this year. So fleabane, of course, can be used for fleas. It is particularly the Canadian fleabane is particularly good for urinary tract problems, again, like teas and things like that out of it. If you want to keep away the fleas, you're supposed to chop this up, put it down where your dog is, and then the dog goes and sleeps over there. Someone doesn't like it at all. You can also bathe animals in it and put it into the water to stop the fleas, so that can be quite useful. Often some of my students have done that. Okay, now another plant here is fennel. Lots of fennel around at the moment. It's really popping up. And I love fennel. This is just the common fennel. You can grow Florence and all the rest of it, but I just use those thick parts here, and I just use them like the Florence fennel. But I go around, I pick this all the time and eat it. I love it, and I love the seeds and things. It does have a very deep tap root, and that's why it actually does so well on the side of the roads in the drought times. And I know my husband was trying to dig one out, and he kept on digging and digging and digging. I don't think he'll ever do that again. So they've got a very, very deep taproot, and that's why they can survive such terrible positions. But here we are growing a beautiful fennel, and we import all our fennel seeds. And yet we grow it on sides of roads and all sorts of places, and our fennel is a beautiful quality fennel that we grow. So learn to use these things that grow around you. They can be very useful. Now, what was the other plant I have? We're getting through them. This one here, do tell me if you need me to stop at any time. This is called dock, or yellow dock. So you can see the head of it. It's not, it goes browny coloured when it gets older. And this is a great big leaf one. There's lots of different types of docks. All docks are edible. So you shouldn't go wrong with a dock. But basically they've got some oxalic acid in them, and too much oxalic acid is not good, especially if you've got things like arthritis. The biggest thing with oxalic acid is make sure you have other foods, and oxalic acid shouldn't give you too much trouble, though I would advise people not to use it if they do have arthritis. So basically you can leave, but then it so has spinach, by the way, got lots of oxalic acid. So just remember that, so you've got to find that balance. You can use the leaves instead of spinach. You put them into boiling water to take them out to get rid of some of the oxalic acid, and then you can put them into pies and things. And then the stem, The stem can be used instead of rhubarb, just tastes the same. Chop it all up, put it with some apple, make some lovely apple and dock crumble, very yummy. But you've got to get some nice fresh ones of these ones. You can get quite a lot once you're growing dock. Dock will also grow in iron-rich soil, so it brings up the iron. So it always tells you an indicator of iron in the soil. Now with the seeds, if you have the seeds, it's very good for diarrhea. And if you have the root, you can use it for constipation. So I use the root and boil it up, and I actually make it into a bit like making Paddy's Lucerne cough syrup. You can make it into a syrup, and it's very good for constipation, and I use it for kids and things like that too, and adults, to help with constipation problems, because yellow dock is a very good one for getting liver working better. And I often say the plant will tell you what it's for, because it's got a yellow root. That's how you know it's yellow dock. If it hasn't got a yellow root, then it's probably not yellow dock. And you can chop up that that root, and you will see that yellowy colour, and yellow shows it's good for bile. And they often say herbs have got doctrines or signatures, so they tell you what they're good for. So interesting little things, plants. Now another one, now you'll all love, and you must all grow, is dandelion. You must all know and love your dandelions. Sorry, no flowers open at the moment this time of day. They're all closed up for the day. And of course, they open into a lovely gossamer ball and fly away. Everyone needs to grow dandelions in their gardens, because it opens up the soil, puts the lovely worms and things into your soil. Dandelions are loaded with goodness. Overseas, in all the health centres and things like that, over Vichy and places like that, you would always get dandelion leaves in your food. It's one of those standard things that you do. It's a very good one for, as a very good diuretic. It's a natural diuretic. And overseas in Europe and places like that, they will often give you dandelion before they give you other things. By all means, whatever I'm saying here is just for yourself to look after yourself just naturally, and always go further if you need to. Get your favourite doctor, herbalist, whatever you use. Basically, the leaves loaded with goodness, full of potassium, loaded with vitamin A, extremely good for you. And it's interesting. We lose potassium when we have diuretics, and here is a plant that puts the potassium back into us again. So what a beautiful plant to learn to love to eat. If you don't like the really bitterish taste it gets on it, then certainly you can put a container over the top and you blanch it, and that takes away some of its bitterness. And a lot of people say, well, can't I just have dandelion tea? Dandelion tea is usually made from the root roasted, so you do lose some of the goodness from it. Maria Traben, who writes beautiful books, she's long gone. She's an Austrian lady that wrote some beautiful books like Health from God's Pharmacy. And she tells you to eat 10 of these in springtime for a spring clean. The stems, they're a bit bitter, but extremely good for you. And bitters, you can always learn to love bitters, because bitters are extremely good for you. And the major thing is the root. And the root is number one for the liver. And by all means, learn to have dandelion coffee and things. It's so much better for you than any other coffee. Now I'll show you one other plant here, because I think we're covered. I'm probably going to run out of time here. There's also lovely natives that we have. And this native here, I don't know, some of you might know fat hen, which is a common little plant that's just coming up now. Well, this plant is actually called fishweed. And it is a chenopodium also, the same as fat hen, and it is native to Australia, and you can eat all those leaves. They do get a fishy flavour at a certain time of year. They don't actually have a flavour, it's just a smell. They smell like bad fish. At the moment, they smell green, but they will cover an area. They say it can fool cats. I don't know, this stupid cat is fooled by that. But basically, it's a really nice little green to have, and if you recognise little fishweed, a little chenopodium plant that grows around your place, then, good learn to savour and learn to love our natives. I love using natives, same as I would love to, but because weeds are common and there's lots of them and everybody's trying to kill them. I remember one workshop, it was a course actually, I was teaching people all about this wonderful dandelion. This old guy came up to me and said, oh, I'd get the weed one and kill all those things all the time. I explained how good they were and everything. Anyway, he came to my course again the next time, and he brought all the dandelion along to share to everybody, because he'd been looking after it. So it's just, you need to understand things, and it just opens up new avenues.
That's
okay,
great.
so any questions?
I have lots of questions again for you. Lorraine is asking, what's the ultimate climate for the wild fennel? Where would you go looking for it when you're out foraging?
Well, it grows a lot up where I am. I'm on the Upper Hunter here, and oh gosh, seed everywhere. I don't know, because it's a Mediterranean plant, so it will grow lots of places, and it's a very simple plant to grow. Get some seeds of it. Anyone ever wants any seeds, let me know, and I can send them some. But basically, it's a very common little plant that you see on the side of roads, and it particularly grows up this direction. I couldn't say exactly. I would have to.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
Oh, look, I'm in North
Does anyone else have
Gosford.
any ideas?
Yeah, well, I'm in North Gosford, and I do have some of it coming up as a weed, and Clara is same area. Says she has a little fennel patch, and it's been there for about 3 years. The bugs love it, and I think it'll be there forever. So yeah, I think once you've planted it, it tends to self-seed and come back, and then come back in.
That's what happens. You know,
Yeah.
I planted the plantain. I planted one plant now. I've got about 20. That's great because I can use it. I use it all the time. So I'm not trying to spread weeds. I'm trying to use them where they're needed. I mean, I planted Withania, beautiful ashwagandha, beautiful plant. God, pops up in the bush. You got to watch these things. You got to watch and be responsible for plants you grow.
Keely is asking, when you spoke about the blackberry nightshade ointment, did you say to put the berries in the ointment when they are green or black?
Yes, you can. Well, what I tend to do is I tend to wait until the plant is turning more black, because that's when it's best. And that's the best time to make the ointment. But you will always get green berries in it, and that is not an issue, because the oil, as long as you cook it up in oil, destroys. I've actually done some research on this. The oil will destroy the selenium, so it's not an issue.
Cool. And Laura again is asking, with the dandelion root, is it roasted to activate its medicinal properties, or is it just to dry it out? Could you dehydrate it and then use it for tea?
You can, but the trouble is why people love dandelion coffee and dandelion tea is because when you roast it, you actually burn it, a bit like you do with coffee, and it gets a flavour like coffee.
Oh.
And that's what people like, is that flavour. So if I remember one lady, she bought all this dandelion root off me because she thought that'd be best. And she said, it was horrible. It was tasteless. I didn't like that at all. And I said, well, you'll have to go and burn it in the oven. So if you want that same flavour as you had when you had dandelion coffee. So just be aware that that's what it is. It gives the flavour. No, it's purely roasted for flavour.
So and I've got a lot of dandelions. Those are nasturtiums I've got in abundance as weeds.
Nasturtiums, wonderful.
The dandelion stem, you're saying it's a good thing to take for bitters, which is great for your gut biome. How do you just eat it as it is, or?
Yes, you can just well, I know Maria Trayvon says just pick 10 stems every summer and chew into them, so they're really good for you. But you by all means chop it up, put it in your salads. You can disguise it with a bit of mayonnaise, you don't even know you're eating it. But it's the bitterness that does you a lot of good, you know.
Yeah. Keely's asking, could you please repeat the name of the author of the book Health and God's Pharmacy that you mentioned?
Maria Trayvon, Treb, Trayban or Trayben, E-N, I think it is, Trayben.
Trayben.
Health Through God's Pharmacy. She wrote a few books, but she was quite a religious lady, and she just looked after all her village and all the people around her. She used to tell people that these herbs would fix MS and everything. She was taken to the courts and everything, but she only just put it in the books. She gave it to people. She never got any money out of it, and that's how she always got out things. Never got in trouble.
Keely's also saying, thank you so much, Pat, for your generosity. Big smiles.
Thank you. That's very nice.
Meg is asking, what would you recommend for gallstones, please?
Gallstones. Okay, the major herb that I use for gallstones is a greater celandine. Now, greater celandine is not a weed. You could grow it, and it grows like a weed all over my garden. I tell you, once you got it growing, it's called greater celandine, and you would have to probably buy it from a nursery or something, I suppose. It's got a yellow sap, and you can put that on suspect sunspots and warts, and it's very, very good on warts. Brilliant.
Celandine. What was the word?
Greater celandine, C-E-L, celandine, A-N-D-I-N-E. And that's specific for gallstones, but you do not use the root. The root's very strong. only use the leaf. And the other herbs that I would use, with another very good one, is globe artichoke. And you would use the leaves of the globe artichoke. You can also use St. Mary's thistle. All the liver herbs are very good, but they're more specific.
Meg, does that answer your question? Did you want to add anything? No. Holly is asking, what is a good weed for regulating women's hormones, please?
Weed. The herb that I tend to use, it's not a weed, is chase tree, Vitex agnus castus. You can grow that quite easily. Otherwise, probably shepherd's purse is a very good herb. And if you know little shepherd's purse, it's around at winter times. It grows a little tiny heart flower on it, heart-shaped seed pod on it. And it's in the Cruciferae family, so it's actually a very edible plant. It's very, very good if you've got trouble with heavy bleeding and things like that.
Cool.
But if you really want to regulate, help with the progesterone, which is often the trouble when we get too much estrogen and not enough progesterone. If you want to regulate, then that chase tree is just amazing. It really is good. And you can grow that plant. You can grind those seeds up and you can use them. It's just a Vitex agnus castus is another one for it.
Thank you so much. This has been just absolutely fascinating, and I am going to go straight out and buy your book now, because I've borrowed it from the library, but I think I'm just going to have to buy it.
Lovely.
The useful weeds at your doorstep, that book, has that got recipes in it?
Yes, this one is more got the recipes in it.
Yep.
This book is not made for recipes, it's research and information and recognition.
Yeah.
So if you buy them together, so that one costs $35, unless you can get it from, I probably can get it from Amazon cheaper, I don't know. But we sell it, of course. And this one we sell for $20. So most of my books are self-published. I've written a lot of books about, and if you want to know how to make ointments and things, I've got a book called Pat's Herbal Recipes, and that's my first book. I wrote on recipes, and so I've written about six books and 7 books, and A to Z ailments, all sorts of things. It's all my series is called has got the same basic so this one's useful weeds at the doorstep, another one's medicinal weeds for home use. So they're all in a series. And so, but this one was the only book that I actually got printed outside. And that was because I could not afford to make all those pictures and things like that. I just couldn't do it myself, because there's over 300 pictures, and they were able to do this for quite. I asked them if I could do it under $30, and they did it for $29.99. Of course, now they put it up, but but it was really good. And when I wrote it, I thought, oh, they'll chop it to pieces and all the rest. How did you do anything? I don't think they knew anything about weeds. But I always wish they'd pushed it out more for people in permaculture and things, because that's what it's really good for, So they put it in the gardening section.
And we can buy those books from your website.
Yes, you can buy it from my website. Just go on to www.patcommons.com, and you will see my books there and all the other products that I sell. But I don't make any claims for my products that I sell, because they're only for people that understand what I do and what I know, and because TGA have got strong rules, and which is fair enough. And so I just call something chickweed ointment or something. So you want to have some knowledge about what you want to buy.
Right. Rachel has mentioned a cute thing. She said she came across people picking shepherd's purse in the park one day for dumplings.
No, there you go. You see, shepherd's purse overseas, over in Asia, they grow a bigger variety, and they use it like you would cabbage and things. It's in that Cruciferae family, which is so good for you. So there you are. Our beautiful plants, it should be used as medicine, eaten just like medicine.
Yeah. Well, look, we're almost at time, but Kerry has just asked if you would mind briefly speaking about weeds as indicators of different soil types and conditions, please. I think you did touch on a couple at the start, but with those with the longer taproots, but would it be possible to say a bit about that, please?
Yeah, okay. Well, a lot of the plants will grow, especially on hard pan soils. A lot of plants that you see, weeds that come up on hard pan soils, are there because they need to dig down and open up the soil. So that's quite a common, lot of plants that do that. Ones with the big tap roots like mallows and things. They're very good for that sort of thing. I cannot remember each individual. I have written it down in my book. I cannot remember all the individuals. I
So
always
on
remember
that,
Doc.
which book has the best
The
information
Wondrous
on it?
World. That's where I
Okay,
put it in.
perfect. That's great.
Plantain, I think, chickweed. I've got all those ones down there. They show soils that are low in magnesium. It's amazing how many of our soils are actually, low in magnesium, and a lot of our plants will bring the magnesium up to the surface. I think this is really important because a lot of us, we probably know that magnesium is a mineral that we're very low in these days, and it's very locked in our soils. The calcium is quite high, but the magnesium has a lot to do with our superphosphates and all those other things that we've been using over the years, and irrigation and things. So the weeds are there. They will open up the soil. They will bring those sort of minerals out that we need. Look, not all plants are like that. Some can be just a pain in the backside and just grow all over the place like catheads, and just grow crazy and not do anything but be a nuisance. But a lot of them do, and when you see them in little isolated patches, as long as you don't overgraze your place and things. Say, for instance, St. John's wort. Now, St. John's wort will grow crazy. I see whole hills covered in St. John's wort. But I always remember going to a person's place and picking it at their place, and the next door neighbour poisoned all the time, killed it all the time. Anyway, the person that I went to with on the other property, she had goats. She didn't overgraze, and got it almost all wiped out. With a person that had poisoned all those years, it just grew all the time. Like if you want to kill something, and just think of your own body. If you take antibiotics and things like that to kill off things, what grows again? The bugs grow again. Unless you put the good stuff back in there. So you need to put the good soil on there so that the St. John's wort won't grow anymore if you want that to happen. So just be aware that the plants are great indicators. They also cover the ground, which means that they particularly something like wandering dew. That's why I allow wandering dew, especially in the drought, to grow all over my place. That's where it got a hold of, because it stopped the evaporation, and it will protect the ground. So nature is always trying to fix things and try and look after it. So just get out there and take a bit more notice of what's around and what grows where, and then you'll get a bit more of an idea about how nature works with us, or we should work with nature. So, and it's very important with permaculture, of course. And remembering all these weeds or anything you chop up and everything, put them back in the compost, put them back onto the land. That's a great way of using them, especially things like nettles and things. I mean, the nettles, don't forget, is great for nitrogen, and so are all the clovers. They really put a lot of, and all clovers are edible. All put the nitrogen into the ground as well.
Yeah, Meg swears by weed compost. Swears by it. She says, it grows everything.
And we put it all in a bucket, and make all that lovely stinky stuff, and then spray it all over your garden. It's great stuff.
Anyway, thank you. That's a wonderful place to leave it. Thank you so much tonight, Pat. That's just really interesting, and I'm sure everyone, if you want to say your thanks in the chat, or you want to come off mute and pass on your best wishes to Pat and thank her for such a brilliant presentation tonight, please do so. There's lots of thank yous and great presentation and such a wealth of knowledge, things coming through on chat at the moment. So this will sort of, I think it'll go along with the recording anyway, so you'll get to see all of those. But thank you so much.